All right, this is the Ken Coleman Show, where we help you grow personally so that you can advance professionally. And then if you keep advancing professionally, I promise you this, you're going to have to learn how to lead effectively. And so we want you winning in your work life. That's what we're about. And so we're going to take on something today that is in that lane of personal growth. If I'm working harder on me than I am my job, good things are going to happen. And the converse is something we need to think about today, and that is, if I'm not growing, if I'm not getting better as a person, I am limiting my potential professionally. And so we're going to talk about something today that I found was really interesting. I read a lot. I like to dig into stuff, and so I'm not an expert on this, but boy, am I diving in, and am I applying this to my own personal life? I am. I think it's going to challenge all of us today. So the question today is, who's the biggest hypocrite you know? Just giving you a minute to chew on that one. Now, you're listening or watching me wherever you are, however you are. But I think it's important to have some fun with this by simply filling in the blank. Who's the biggest hypocrite you know? And we could kind of broaden this a little bit. And maybe you don't know him personally. Well, who do you think the biggest hypocrite in the world is? Oh, boy, here comes now that's going to get it flowing. Now, obviously, I think all of you had some names pop up right away. Some of you maybe had somebody pop up that's in your life. Ouch. I'm sorry about that, but we're going to make that make sense in a moment. Some of you thought about somebody, maybe a politician. Oh, boy. We're not going to go there too much today. We are going to touch on that, because I think we can all unite around the fact that politicians have got to be the biggest hypocrites on the planet. Just look at their approval ratings. It's hysterical. And by the way, approval ratings just on Congress it's like all-time low. It's like the lowest professional role in America. So we, the people, basically don't like any of our politicians across the board, right? And so history has a way of shining the light on a lot of hypocrites. Now, I want you to be provoked right now, not offended. So I want some of you to realize that I'm going to bring up an example right now, and it's not to hate. It's just bringing up an example of how hypocrisy ruined the career and the legacy of a politician. Okay? So, one of my personal favorites on how hypocrisy pops up when we don't mean it, and we're going to really break this down today, but the guy that stands out to me as I begin to think about it from my lifetime is George Herbert Walker Bush. Okay? And at the Republican National Convention in 1988, I'm just going to take you back. Okay? 1988. He's been Ronald Reagan's vice president for 8 years. Now he's going to get the nomination, and he gets up to make his keynote address to accept the nomination. And the big soundbite that came from his acceptance speech was a campaign promise. Then it was a strong moment. Those of you who are my age or a little bit older, maybe a little bit younger, may have seen this. For those of you that are younger, he basically looks at the camera, and I should have had you guys pull the clip. And if you guys can pull it and use it, great. We don't have to. But this is what he does. He looks at the camera, he looks at the teleprompter, and he makes a strong moment. And it's probably one of the strongest moments of his political career. And this is what he said. Read my lips. It's my best impression I can do. No new taxes. And the crowd goes wild, right? It's red meat for a Republican convention. I thought it was fantastic, and I was 14. That was it. And it was all over the news. It was everywhere the next day, the next week, the next month, all the way through Election Day. Read my lips. No new taxes. Hey, listen, that is a bold statement. By the way, I like it. Just in case anybody cares, I hate taxes. I hate them. So, what happens? About 2 years later, he compromised. And he signed a bill that raised Americans' taxes. Boom. And it was over. From that moment on, he had zero chance of beating Bill Clinton or any other Democrat, in my opinion. because it was the singular thing that he said, and he was so emphatic, and it was so clear, and it was so widely reported, and it was like, he looked at the American people and he said, trust me. That's essentially what he was saying. Read my lips. No new taxes. And so he failed. He failed. He was not reelected. It tanked his chances. Later on, as they began to get into the campaign, he was talking about this and that and this and that, and they just kept holding him to it. Oh, you said you weren't going to raise taxes. And it just, it crushed him. So he's running for re-election, and all the Democrats did, and they did the right thing. They just reminded him of that vow and that you didn't do it. And it was over. And so what is the reason for me sharing that story? Because hypocrisy can ruin our credibility. Now, it's also possible to get it back. But in this political context, it ruined a good man's credibility. Now, I got some bad news. That can be good, but right now it's bad news. All of us are hypocrites on some level. And we're going to talk today about how to minimize the gap between what we say and what we do. Because in that gap, that's where hypocrisy comes up, and it can really hurt us. It can damage relationships. It can damage reputations. The gap between what we say and what we do. Because when we do that, watch, we become the most untrustworthy or the most trustworthy people in the room. It just happened. If we can get better to where we say, this is what I say I'm going to do, and I believe in what I'm saying, and I'm going to do it, we become some of the most trustworthy people on the planet because so few people do it. Well, very quickly we can go from being trustworthy to the most untrustworthy person in a relationship. Hello, and in the office. Now, here's the reason this matters. Trust is the currency of progress. So I want you all to see your potential and meet your potential professionally because it's a huge part of your life. That's the whole reason I do this show. I believe we were created to work. Genesis chapter 2. If you're new to the show, you want to know why I believe what I believe, here we go. Genesis chapter 2, we were created to work. We spend more time at work than we do anything else in our lives, most of us. And to spend all that time not doing something that you're good at, something that you enjoy, something that produces results that mean something deeply to you is to live a life of regret, to live a life that is not as meaningful as we would desire. That's why we do what we do. And so to that end, trust, us being trustworthy is the currency, or I could say it is the fuel for our growth. Our growth is limited when we aren't trustworthy. It's just that simple. And so we were talking in a meeting and we started talking about this idea of we're all hypocrites, so nobody gets out of this deal without being hypocritical. But it begs the question, why are so many of us guilty of or victims of our own hypocrisy? So why is it that we do it when we hate it with everybody else? I mean, when I opened up, when I started the show today, I said, I wanted you to think of, who do you think is the biggest hypocrite you know? And the reason is I wanted to get you emotionally to a place where you're going, because all of us have some disdain for someone who we think is a hypocrite, and we're putting a real label on them. In other words, they live that way, or someone who has been hypocritical to us. And oh my goodness, a friend, a spouse, a coworker, a boss. Hello, a boss. Oh my gosh, the boss. The boss is such a hypocrite. This guy, this gal, they talk out of both sides of their mouth. Come on. I got studio audience members that are laughing. Somebody feels that pain. I get it.